Okay, welcome to the second episode of IBC interviews. So, we are here to discuss your book,
Thank you.
which
Thank you for your
is Untangle the Entangled, right? So, if you could, give me an insight about your book, like,
yeah. So it's a poetry collection that was initially handwritten in my diary,
okay, so it
and
was handwritten.
yeah, and it was not supposed to be a book. It was just some poetry that came out of overwhelming emotions. So that was written in my diary, but it turned out to be a good collection. So
Mm-hmm.
it- so it's not very themed or like having some specific kind of poetry. It's different.
You know, a
Not,
collection of different fragments. It's
yeah,
a fragmented
kind of.
collection.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. So, if you could take us through your book, like
Yeah.
how the idea came about.
Yeah. So initially, when I started writing, I was not into poetry. I did not read or write poetry. I thought it was very tough of something that I wasn't able to do. Like I'll ever be able to write poetry. But gradually, I started to read more and more poetry online, and I started to love the way it worked out. So
Mm,
um, that's when I started writing free verses, and
mm,
that kind of led to expressing myself through poetry as well, because I
mm,
like to compare what was in my mind to very different things. Like one of the poems in my book is called Bubbled, and
mm,
that is describing myself as a bubble amidst a sky,
mm,
and what it's like,
mm,
to feel afraid that anytime you're going to just pop up. And so I like to express myself in different ways, my emotional and mental uh, situations in ways that most people may not be able to think. So I liked that. So yeah,
mm.
that's what led to
So, okay.
the idea of writing.
So, uh, you know, when did the idea to get this published strike you? Like, when exactly did you feel that I should go ahead and get it published?
So I was halfway through the writing this diary. It was about to get completely filled up, and I realized that one night I was just randomly reading what I've written so far, and I realized they're actually kind of making sense, and not just to me, but the people around me, my friends, my family. It's making sense to them. They're understanding what I'm trying to say through poetry, and they thought that's pretty good. So I
Mm,
thought I should probably post it on social media, but
mm-hmm.
my mother was against that. She said it's pretty
Why
good
so?
and you shouldn't just waste it away. No, she was like, you should not just waste it away posting it on social media. It could be like a really good thing.
Yeah, good.
So she didn't let me post it
Mm,
free. She said it shouldn't be available for free. So that's when the idea came. But after that, I did not actually send in any proposals
mm,
to publishers that I'm interested to get this published, because I still wasn't sure that I'm capable of
mm.
getting poetry published. It wasn't good enough. But
Oh,
at some point of
each one of
time, I
us is
think next
capable.
month,
That's not a problem at all.
so kind of. So I was very afraid of that, so I did not send it. But I think it was supposed to happen. It happened right before my pre-boards.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a tough time for figuring all of that out,
Intense
but
that
it
is.
happened.
During class 10, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, you
yeah,
know, all of us are like, we need to get good marks in board exams, and you were busy writing poetry that time. So, kudos to you.
yeah. So yeah, and in fact, a lot of people appreciated my parents for that. I do a lot, because if
How
at
much did
that point
you
of time they were able to put
how
in
much did you score in your board exams? Might I ask? I'll chop it off like I'll
I
chop it
scored
off like
93%. I scored 93%.
you are one of those toppers. I shouldn't be talking to you then.
No, no, nothing, nothing like that. But yeah, I was expecting better marks than that. Okay, so let's just not get into that.
Bro, okay. So that's a topic for another day. So, you know,
Yeah.
um, so what exactly was the emotion behind, the poetries that the pieces of poetry that you wrote?
Okay, so majorly, firstly, as a teenager, especially in the kind of world we are living in, we are made to feel very insecure about ourselves,
Okay, so
about the
insecurity.
yeah, kind of like, at times you just start to hate yourself and you think that you are just going to fail in life or something like that. So those emotions, to lead myself to the ending of the poetry was always supposed to be positive, and the beginning was always very gloomy. If you notice the pattern of my poetry, it's always like that. So I always try and keep my thoughts inclined towards positivity, and that comes by the end of the poem always.
Optimism, that is, if I may put it
It
simply.
comes out always starts with a very gloomy feeling, and it always ends with a hint of positivity.
Okay,
So
so
one
from
that is one thing.
pessimism to optimism.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always like that. And apart from that, I also explored a few other genres. Like I talked about toxic masculinity in one of the poems because I felt
Okay.
that it was like something that was impacting people around me. So there were a
So
few
did Kabir
poems
Singh
about that.
had a role to play in that? Might I ask?
I did not watch that. No, I did
Neither
not
did I.
watch that movie. But yeah, but I did read about it, and a lot of people had very different opinions.
Hmm.
Some said that there was nothing wrong with it because it was something that was a very
Hmm.
particular case of two people, which had nothing to do with the larger cause such as toxic masculinity or involving feminism into it. But I don't have an opinion because I haven't watched the movie. So
Yeah,
toxic
neither
masculinity
have
I see more in my day-to-day life, around the people around me, the men around me. So that's where it came from, probably not from a particular poem.
I. Okay, so you talk of, you move from pessimism to optimism. So any particular reason behind it? Like you could have kept it, you could have ended it on a pessimistic note, but
Yeah, I could have, but the thing is, first of all, if I do end it on a pessimistic note, what is my reader getting out of reading this?
hmm,
What's
hmm,
the
hmm.
am I just there to tell them what I'm feeling, or am I giving them something? Am I able to
Okay.
give them a sense of hope?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
That was the purpose, to give myself hope that there is always something brighter behind every dark thing. Like in Harry Potter, one of my favorite dialogues is that one can in the
Hmm,
darkest of times one can find light if only one remembers to turn on the light. So it's
hmm.
one of my favorite lines, so I do believe
So since you move from pessimism to optimism, you remind me of Percy Shelley.
that. Okay.
If you've sort of read Ode to the West Wind,
No, I haven't.
it is a pessimistic poem that moves from sort of pessimism to optimism. You know, the last two lines of that poem are quite optimistic. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? So, um, haven't you read Ode to the West Wind?
No, I
Like,
haven't actually,
it's
because
part of class 10, the English course curriculum.
it changed. It changed
Okay.
the year I came to class 10. The books changed. So apparently it wasn't in our syllabus.
You have been robbed of some of the biggest joys of life.
I do agree, because most people say that the previous English course book was actually very good.
Hmm.
But the time by the time I came to class 10th, it was a very I should say, I don't know, it was a very average kind of a regular English textbook. It wasn't very fun to read.
Hmm. Okay. So, coming back to the poetry collection that you wrote, again, if I might, be a little specific. Mm, see, there's a thought behind each of the poems that there must have been a thought about, each of the poems that you might have written. So, can you take me through that thought process?
Yeah, when I read conventional poems that revolved around a certain muse, romanticizing a certain person or glorifying somebody, I never understood that. Even though I love the way people express, you know,
Hmm.
love for somebody,
Hmm.
but I personally don't think that that is what my poetry is supposed to do. I
Okay.
believe it needs to be empowering, and if that doesn't happen,
Empowering in what way, might I ask?
yeah. If a person does not feel as a stronger individual, somebody who wants to love themselves after reading it. So the
Hmm.
only thought I had in my mind was that after reading it, I'm supposed to feel good about myself. So there is this poem called Robots in my book. All
Okay.
right, and it's like a one line. It's a snippet actually. It's not exactly a poem. It's a snippet,
Okay.
and it is about the kind of world we are living in, where we are fixing us. We have become robots. We
Okay.
have a
So
fixed.
following a tight schedule.
Yeah, like we have just simply become robots. We don't
Hmm.
have that kind of emotion. We're just fixing, going through a fixed schedule. So the reason why I wrote that was also because something that happened in my daily routine, when I felt that there was too much going on and there was nothing that actually meant something in my life. I wrote that.
Hmm.
So a
Hmm.
few days back, I was rereading what I had already written a year back, and I
Hmm.
realized that there is so much sense and into what I was writing back then. I could understand why I wrote those things.
Okay.
It because I was observing things in my life and then I was writing about them.
Okay. So, you know, if I may ask, so what, according to you, is poetry? Like, I want your personal opinion. When I say poetry, what exactly comes to your mind?
I think it is something most writings need to be very expressive. I think poetry is one thing that everyone interprets in a different way because it's not
Yeah.
specific. When a
Yeah.
writer writes something, it's written with another thought, and when somebody else reads it, it's with another
So
thought.
there's a difference in the way it is perceived by different people, is what you
Yeah,
want to say.
it's always different. I mean, like there are no two people who would have the right kind of
Same
interpretation
opinion.
of simple poetry. Yeah, and that is why when I started to read poetry seriously in my curriculum as well in
Hmm.
school, I was very disappointed with the way it was taught.
Hmm.
Each and every word and what it meant was taught to us. We were not
Okay.
allowed to interpret it. So I prefer that you let us read the poem, interpret it by ourselves. Let all of us have 40 interpretations of that same poem, and then uh, gradually we shift to what the conventional standards of teaching,
Hmm.
are.
Hmm.
Yeah, I personally do not prefer that, but yeah, that's
Okay.
how it
So talking of poetry,
is.
uh, take me through some of your favorite poets. Like, which are your favorite poets, if there are any?
I read again this poem I read because of my school. So I read The Road Not Taken, and
Robert Frost.
yeah, I guess so. This particular poem is always going to be my favorite.
Hmm.
Um, I always love Robert Frost, but this particular poem always stays with me. I use a lot of this poem in my references when I write about something, so I do love that. And Atticus is one poet of today that I absolutely love because his style is like very, uh, you know, European, I guess. I don't know. I mean, like it's very modern. It's very
Formal? Like, is it formal, might I ask?
no, it's not formal. He talks about sitting on a Sunday afternoon in Paris in a cafe in a poem, and it would
So
make
that
you
casual look and feel is there.
yeah. There is something very contemporary.
Hmm. And tempting.
Yeah, absolutely. So it would relax you. And
Hmm.
I have one book by Atticus, and
Hmm.
I have read it like so many times. So whenever you feel like you just need to relax, you can just go ahead and read his book. And
Hmm.
I have read Rupi Kaur as well. I have read two of her books. But I'm like I have very mixed opinions about her. So some of her poems are like really good, really good.
Okay. So, which brings me to my next question. Um, you know, as you said, poetry is perceived differently by different people. So, how do you perceive it? Like, what is your opinion of poetry? Like, what does it, express? What is the meaning of it, according to you?
I think poetry is I think it's very refreshing.
Okay. Refreshing
I
in what way?
I think poetry is something that would give you, so there are things which are very complex in our life. So when poetry makes life simpler for you, it compares very complex things to very simple things, and that you know makes you understand how simple life is, and how simply you can express the most complicated of
Hmm.
things. It builds a relationship between you and life.
Yeah. Okay. So, now take me through, the emotions that kept running riot in your mind, in your head, when that first book came out and you were handed the first copy of your book.
I remember that day distinctly. Maybe because as a very young girl, I had this dream that I had to get a book published. So I came back from a class, and my book was delivered, and my parents had not opened the copy because they
The
wanted me to
parcel,
wrap.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I opened it, and I the first thing that actually I did was I handed it to my parents, and then I went and
Hmm.
actually showed it to one of my favorite teachers, and that's because I am just thankful to these people in my life. And
Hmm.
what I felt was I don't even know how to explain that feeling.
Hmm.
It's profound. It's really
Okay, so a lot of people have been asking me for writing tips. So, as a writer who has, you know, a book to her credit, what tips would you have for amateur writers?
don't stop writing.
Okay.
I think that was the biggest mistake I made. At some point, I totally stopped writing. And that's
Hmm.
one thing you shouldn't do. No matter how bad your writing gets, no matter what kind of writer's block uh,
Hmm.
you might think you are feeling, but you should just keep going. You should keep writing. You should
Hmm.
keep at it. At some
Okay.
point, you'll do it.
Okay. So, which brings me to my last question. Like, if you were to meet an author or a poet, whom would it be? Like any contemporary poet or someone from the medieval ages, or the likes of Shelley or Coleridge or something.
I think it would be Khalil Gibran,
Okay.
because I read his selected works, and his poem, there's this book that he wrote that is The Prophet. It's
Yeah.
my one of my favorites, and I absolutely love it. So I think
Hmm.
that is one person whose thought process is too fascinating to leave out. Yeah.
Hmm. So this very much concludes the interview, and thank you very much, Shivangi, for taking out time for you know having a chat. It was wonderful having you here, and
Thank you.
um, this brings us to the close of the second interview for the IBC. And for more such interviews, uh, log into the IBC portal and treat yourself to some excellent content. Thank you very much.